Welcome back. Unacceptables, we're back. We've been away for a little while. I think Jay was sick, and then it was Valentine's Day, or vice versa. I'm not sure what happened. Either way, we're back. We got a great show for you coming up. With me, as always, here is I'm Scott, by the way, and with me, as always, is Jay Shaw, Mr. Unacceptable himself, the man, the myth, the legend. Jay, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm very white pilled at the moment, so that's really good. That's really good. Uh-oh.
Well, perhaps you want to explain.
Um, yeah, sure. I mean, there's kind of a lot. I see a changing. A couple of important statements have been made lately. You know what? I actually think I should just start with a clip. I'll show you what I mean, and then I'll kind of break it down for everybody after. So I'm gonna
All
just
right, cool,
hit
cool. Let's do
this
it.
here.
Mr. Sherman, it's estimated that between 5 and 18 million people died from COVID-19 worldwide. To a significant number of scientists, the evidence suggests that this originated from a lab leak in Wuhan. Does the State Department fund coronavirus research in China?
Do we fund coronavirus? I don't believe so, but I don't know. I'll double check and we'll get back to you on that, Senator.
The answer is yes, you do, and it's been going on for more than a decade, and it's done through a program called PREDICT and then the Global Virome. And why this is important is we had 1 million Americans die, and we really haven't had any discussion of this. No hearings, nothing. People are unaware that they're even funding the research. We found out recently through the House unclassified report that money is going from the NIH to American universities to the Academy of Military Medical Sciences Research in China. Doing this research, they're doing it in what's called a BSL-2 as opposed to a BSL-4. Most of the research that we think escaped was not done in the appropriate lab. And the State Department knew about it, but we've had no hearings about this. They refused to give us information. 15 million people died, 1 million Americans died, and you won't give us information. So what I would ask is look at our request. This isn't partisan. This should be about discovering the origins of this. The scientific community is about 50-50 now. The scientific community is about 50-50 now. The scientific community is about 50-50 now. And I would hope that we suspect the Chinese of not being honest and withholding information, but it's sad that the U.S. government is withholding information from its representatives.
Well,
The first important thing that
wow.
Mr. Rand Paul cites there is that the science is now 50-50, and I suspect that half of that of the 50% of people who are saying that all the science has been accurate all along, I would suspect that a large number of those, it's simply that they don't want to admit having committed bad science, that everybody else walked around and said, we're just following the science. So that's the first and most important thing there. The second and most important thing that I've negligibly left out of that video, and I do apologize for that. This is the reason that Rand Paul is able to speak to this woman and say, you do fund this, is because there was some fairly major documents leaked from the State Department that went to a publication that did go public with it, and so although it's classified information, it was leaked to a newspaper who was allowed to run it, and there was no pushback against them running it. So there's another thing. Now we're starting to get back the respect and the dignity that whistleblowers used to have. For many, many, many years, news corporations relied on whistleblowers to get information out. And then there was an act to suppress that over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And that's walking back a little bit now. So we're gaining ground, people. And there's a lot to do. There's a lot that's still going on that we need to fight back on. That's important. The reason that we're mentioning that, it's in the United States, but it's critically important because everybody follows the United States in this stuff. We got all our information from the CDC, American organization. We passed everything through as a result of the American FDA already approving everything, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here in Canada, we've got For one thing, the major and critical is that the third reading of Bill C-11, which I've done a lot more looking into to find out that that after the first reading in Senate, the second reading began with the senators came to the table with 79 amendments to C-11, as the C-11 that's literally that's the only one you find online. They have not posted any of the amendments. Now, so some of those amendments were adopted in the second reading and not published online. And now in the third reading, some of those have been dropped and some more have been added on. And these were given back to the Senator Rodriguez, the heritage minister, who has 2 weeks ago he did a big press conference, a very showy affair, sat down with a reporter, did an interview. She grilled him pretty hard. It's a really great interview. I recommend that everybody go and take a look at that. Senator Rodriguez talks about C-11. It's a really good video. You should check it out. But he was expecting to get back exactly what he wanted the next day. He was hoping that it was going to be in law this week. We still have not heard back from him or from the Senate. So he has not yet responded to the Senate. I suspect that we're not going to hear anything more about this until after the commission, the Emergency Act Commission comes out. I don't think they want to be kind of wavering on this right before they get smacked with something else they may have to waver on. So we may have seen the last of C-11 for a while. This is a bill proposed by one senator. He can pull it if he wants. If he doesn't like the direction it's going, it's ultimately up to him to decide it. But anyway, we've seen that walk back. Long rifles, a lot of that got walked back. Again, they're back in committee with C-21. We don't even know what that's going to look like after. Again, the political maneuvering that could go on in the next few weeks. The Liberal Party may be a completely different organization than it did before. I'm encouraged by the fact that Commissioner Luckey retired. That really bodes well to what's happening. And I don't think that that what we're going to see from Rollo is going to be as preferential as the Liberals might think. And I think we're seeing the results in that suddenly they're a bit of a deer in the headlights. So that's why I'm white-pilled right now, because there's some really cool actions taking place, and and that's because a lot of people are pushing back, making their voices heard.
Well, I mean, that's always a good thing when people speak
Yeah.
up and people say things. I too subscribe to the theory that we may not see a favorable result for the Liberals. I have a speech impediment tonight, folks. Bear with me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, suffice it to say that there will be some reaction from the Liberal cabinet members. Some of them might jump ship. Some of them might start to make moves in the background to maybe do a little bit of damage to their fellow cabinet members. Hopefully, primarily to Captain Sox himself, if there's anything right and just in the world. I for one, you look at what's going on in the polls right now, and it's quite possible that the Conservatives will win an election, but they probably won't win enough seats. And it's quite likely, I'm not trying to be doomsday or doomsayer here or anything, but it's quite likely that because it's so close with the Liberals and the Conservatives, that the NDP will make another coalition government with the Liberals. And then, excuse me, when they do that, they do have the right, the Governor General does have the right, especially if it's during the election, she does have the right to reverse the election results and cite that as the actual government. So, I mean, the battle, I don't think the battle is at all or ever was, Conservatives, Liberals.
No.
I mean, I think that they all do. They all want the same thing. They're all going for the same goal, which is control of money, control of industry, control of you,
Mhm.
and to line their pockets. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's you hear a lot of people say you got to get the liberals out of government and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, as much as I agree, because this leftist woke ideology has to fucking go, because it's so bad for business, it's so bad for morale, it's so bad for mental health, it's so bad for government, it's so bad um, for GDP, economics, like it's just bad for everything. There's
Mhm.
nothing good. And you know what? When you ask somebody who's woke or who's got this on their mind, you ask them, well, what is woke? What is this gaining you? What are you moving towards? What is this leftist agenda? And they don't really know.
No.
It's progressive. Well, progressive towards what?
Yeah, yeah.
What are you
It's
progressing towards?
progressive as in like, well, it's different than it was 10 years ago. That doesn't inherently mean it's good. You know,
Exactly. It could exactly. It could quite likely mean it's bad. In this case, it does, and we're seeing the results of
Mm,
that in all sectors of everything. So,
yeah.
um, it's interesting because it's like, well, we're being progressive. We're allowing, change to happen and people to be more free. But are you? Are you really?
Yeah.
Because
Mm.
I remember a time not so long ago that the left will hail as a triumphant moment where a bunch of us were very much not free when we chose something that should be rightfully our right to choose. We were then ostracized from society and pretty much banished from any public eatery
Mhm.
because we exercise freedom. And
And travel.
how does somebody who has a liberal mindset, who's promoting freedom in all senses of the word, including mutilating the genitals of 12-year-olds, like because they think the 12-year-olds want this or know enough to want this, how does an ideology like that, how does that support mandating a medical procedure
Yeah.
that isn't of your own free will?
Yeah. It's very opposite. And the same way, even the monetary policy itself is not a liberal. Like the ESG system is not liberal. That by definition, it is not a liberal thing. It is an over controlling thing. It's the manipulation of the money market in a way that's never ever anybody ever even came close to ever. Supply and
Mhm.
demand has been attacked so harshly, and the market. You know what? Here's the ironic thing. In ancient India, the word God meant market, trade, economy. Um, and in all actuality, the market being left on its own, people having the right to decide what is valuable and what isn't, what has quality and what doesn't. It's people's right to decide that actually makes sure that things get better. It's the reason why we're very good at doing more with less, because that's in the interest of profit too. People aren't just burning all kinds of extra fuel because they like burning fuel. They're doing the most efficient thing possible. They're spending the least amount of money to to produce the most goods, and they don't do that by being wasteful with something like fossil fuels. So the whole concept of that, and I mean, and the concept of losing track of our chromosomes. I mean, how can we dispute? How could we be disputing biology? How could people be disputing biology? The same people who say you have to follow the science or stay in your house. Like
Well, what
it's hypocritical. It's so
you don't
hypocritical.
you don't believe in the science, Jay?
I believe in good science. I believe in that. I believe that Albert Einstein was argued with and insulted and hated by a lot of scientists. And I think that's the case with
I
Galileo.
Yep.
Generally, the scientist who's right and is good and has done his job correctly is
Oh,
going to face fierce opposition.
I agree, and I submit that
Yeah.
any scientist who is worth anything in history is usually vilified by society. And Tesla, Einstein, just to name a couple of the most brilliant minds of our time. Even, well, what the hell was his name? Anyways, I lost my. I was thinking of a guy and I can't remember his name. Either way, it doesn't matter. The point remains that the most brilliant scientists and the most intelligent people are usually labeled as crazy or
Mhm.
with wackos or extremists or
Yeah.
you and I are labeled as extremists. Anybody watching this live stream is labeled as an extremist, so we must all be fucking brilliant. Apparently,
Yeah.
I mean, this stands to reason, right? Um,
I would say
we,
watch for the scientists who aren't chasing a paycheck. You watch guys like Jay Baccaria. That guy could have made a huge living on COVID. He's in the right track. He lost his father. All kinds of things occurred where he could have just cashed in. But you watch that guy fight and struggle and sweat and get cussed out and thrown out of institutions that he's had a long-standing history of good relationships with, and you go, that guy's not full of shit. He's not working for some lobby group or something. That's a guy who's looking for the truth.
for sure is not. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And those are people you should be paying attention to. And I've noticed lately, by the way, Jay, I forgot to tell you about this. So I'm just going to dump this on you now. Starting Sunday, because today's Thursday, we always go live, guys. Every day that we go live, you'll see at the bottom of the stream, you'll see all our socials, our subject matter, and usually a fuck you to the government of some kind. As a ticker on the bottom, so you can keep up with us. Please go and follow us on Telegram. Anybody watching the stream should follow us on Telegram because we can say more there and do more there that YouTube and Twitter don't let us get away with. Once we get set up on Rumble, then we're able to do and say a little bit more. But for now, some of the subject matter is edited or made more PG, if you will, to use terminology. And so just go and follow us there. Anyways, that said, every week or maybe every week, I think maybe Sundays, what I'm going to do, so starting this Sunday, is I want to cover another live stream or another podcast that we think is good, and maybe do a couple of clips and tell you why we think they're good, and encourage you guys to follow them. And the reason for this is because what I've noticed is that there's a big saturation of a lot of people starting live streams and podcasts, and me and this gentleman in the window beside me have been doing this for a while, have been into this stuff for a while. And, for me, I started listening to podcasts as soon as they were around, but I've been into, let's see, we'll call them conspiracy theories, because the difference between a conspiracy theory and a conspiracy is about 6 months at this point. Actually, lately it's been about 3 months. It's pretty fast.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround. Yeah.
It's we're getting so we only look like conspiracy theorists for 3 months at a time as opposed to a year or two at a time.
Well, we're capitalists. We master it and we figure out a way to do it better, and then it just starts.
Yeah. Capitalize on the wow. So anyway, so every Sunday I'm going to cover another live stream, another podcast, some sorts of media that we think you guys should get involved with. And we will likely start. I'm going to start on Sunday with probably True North, because they're rock solid. They're Canadian, so it speaks to us here, but moreover, they have a very factual. In my opinion, it's how they should be. How CBC's run, they should take over. True North should get the funding CBC has.
Yep.
For all of their content and to develop themselves that way, as long as it falls under the scrutiny of the guys running True North right now. That's my opinion. But either way, so that's what
I agree 100%. 100%.
So there we go. That's going to be a new segment every week, once a week, Sunday. I will go over somebody. Sometimes it's going to be somebody cool. Sometimes it's going to be somebody maybe not as cool, but kind of more boring, but very factual and stuff you need to know. But either way, I think that's important for everybody. And I'm going to start that as of Sunday. And sorry, Jay, that I'm surprising you with that.
No, that's fine.
I had that written in my notes for tonight to announce and
Mhm.
forgot to talk to you about it ahead of time. So
Yeah, no, that's fine.
That's on me.
And that's very good because it actually lines right up with a core value of ours, veracity. Veracity is the accuracy of information that is factual. So when something isn't opinion based, then it has veracity. If it's a fact, it has a very high veracity. And if it's sort of a wishy-washy almost fact, then there's a lower veracity. And so that's right in our code of ethics. And one of the ideas that we've been kicking around actually is to offer a news feed on our app, which will be, you're going to see more of that coming out soon. I'm probably going to cover that a bit on Sunday too. We actually want to have a news feed called Truthly. And what we want to do with that is actually have 6 very informed, really, really smart people who read widely and like to do so, to be a panel of experts. And I'm not talking about moderation, like these people have to say it's okay or else it doesn't get posted. These are the people that are going to review it. What's going to make it more, have a higher level of veracity and make it better, is the simple fact that what we're going to do is create a system where the poster, so these are independent journalists, people who are really working hard at this stuff. They're trying to build a following online through social media, which is where a lot of us want to get our news now. These people will have to put up a down payment, sort of, to back up that this story is of high quality. It'll then be reviewed by the panel, and then the viewers, like our partners who come to check out the feed, are going to be able to see what the experts said about it to determine whether or not they want to read it. They'll be able to read it, and then the way that they rate the article and what they have to say about it will actually affect whether that person gets their money back or whether they make a profit on it. And once they get into that profitable area, then the more likes, follows, shares, etc. that they get, we will pay them for how well that story does once it's past the threshold of veracity, so that we can say this is as factual as it gets. That's why it's important. Everybody should see it. The more people see it, the more effect and impact it has on society will determine the profitability. And this creates a layer of separation between sponsorship, lobbying, etc., and creates a covenant between the public and the poster. The poster being, that's where we want to get our news. If you're smart, you would rather get your news from an independent journalist who has nothing to lose, doesn't have any corporate sponsors to please. They're getting by on clicks, and that's good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good.
So we're right in line, and maybe this is you inspiring and letting me kick myself in the butt and say let's get this feed moving, which I'd really like to do in the near future. So, and if anybody has any ideas on that, ways that you could, how that could really work and how it could go well, and what you would expect to see if, having heard that described, what would you expect that to look like?
Mhm.
Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
And yeah, for sure. And further to that, I think we should make a point of supporting those we can see clearly do present the truth and factual information, so that they have the ability to keep doing it, and so that it sends a message to all of the other mainstream outlets. And in my opinion, they should be dinosaurs at this point and replaced by the proper types of media that we're seeing from the likes of Rebel News and True North.
Yeah.
So,
We're all really only asking for clicks. That's it.
yeah. So I mean,
you don't have to spend money. Share, like, and follow, and you're helping.
Share, like, and follow. That's just it. Like, just share, like, and follow. Share, like, and follow anybody that we recommend. Because at the end of the day, you're doing a favor for justice and truth. Because out of truth comes justice, and that's a quote from somebody, and I forget who it is. What else
And
is
just
going on,
before
Jay?
we move away, just before
yeah.
we move away from
Go ahead.
that,
Go ahead.
I did want to mention on the reason why veracity comes up for I believe that the universe has funny ways of making things happen, and I won't get too in depth with that, but it's really interesting because it's important that you say that we talk about veracity right now, because what we have is a terrible crisis is happening in the states. People all over Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Ohio are being affected by a massive failure on the part of a railway, a derailment. Just happened to be a train that had quite a few toxic chemical cars on it, and they had to do a controlled burn, and it got in the atmosphere, and it got in the groundwater, and it got all over the place. And the U.S. government behaved the same way they did during Katrina, which was to fail the citizens horribly, and they're still doing so now. That being said, here's what the media will do, and what piss poor independent journalists will do, is take that and go, oh, people are interested in train derailments all of a sudden, huh? And then every time there's a train derailment, they say a train carrying toxic chemicals. All trains are carrying toxic chemicals all the time. Every single train.
Almost.
You don't see trains that are only toxic chemicals. They don't do that. That's the stupidest thing to do. So they're staggered throughout a load. They're staggered over a number of days.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, the average number of derailments in a year is 489. There is one a day and then some. It's very common.
Although last year there were 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
they go up with
the number varies. And so what I like that Jay's pointing out here is where I'm going to it's almost exactly where I was going, which is almost like we're in sync here tonight, brother. So I'm glad that we're back at it tonight of all nights.
Good.
Because what I notice is that there's a ton of coverage exactly about this Ohio train derailment. And I wanted to touch on most of that. That was kind of what I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to talk about it specifically to the Ohio train derailment, and then touch on why, all of a sudden this is the thing that everybody's paying attention to. Because quite frankly, in my opinion, the Ohio train derailment is a very serious tragedy, perhaps as significant, and I'm trying not to be too dramatic here, but perhaps as significant and far-reaching as Chernobyl, and that's huge in the continental United States. But it also has far-reaching implications insofar as like Canada is concerned, all the way to the south, east, and west are getting a lot of damage, and I'm seeing a lot of results of the fallout of this thing. So when I say Chernobyl level disaster, I don't think I'm exaggerating. What I'm noticing, two things. Number one, it's being over sensationalized on Twitter and all these various outlets, because people are now, and I've seen posts on Twitter where people are saying that a bunch of fish washing up on shore near the ocean somewhere, which last I checked, Ohio doesn't border any oceans, but I mean, anybody who's a geography major, feel free to correct me. But
the water tracing, the Ohio kind of meanders and ends up in the Mississippi, and then eventually ends up in the Mississippi Gulf. However, if you were to put a cup of really, like if you were able to create a little bubble in the river,
show that map. I'm actually going to show that.
Okay.
Map.
Yeah.
I've actually got that map in my.
So yeah, if you released a bubble into the river where the derailment was, it would take 17 days for that bubble to reach the Gulf of Mexico. So that's,
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to get there. So the fact that it's dumped into the Ohio River, this chemical, and it's there, it's in all the waterways. So, I think maybe I just want to roll this. Let's go to this. Here, I'm gonna do this one first. Yeah, okay. So this is just an overview of the Ohio train derailment and what some people are labeling, and myself included, as a Chernobyl level disaster. So here we go. We'll be back in about 2 minutes here.
Massive train derailed Friday, 20 of them carrying hazardous materials as flames lit up the sky in northeastern Ohio.
The evacuation order is in place for anyone within a mile radius of the crash site.
These aren't storm clouds. This is the fucking shit! The fucking shit that burned off in East Palestine! This is not fucking storm clouds! Look at it!
Officials are claiming that the air and water are safe. Residents say they can still smell chlorine. They've complained about their eyes watering when they go outside, and one woman says the noxious air killed her chickens.
Out of nowhere, he just started coughing really hard and just shut down and went very fast.
Look at all these fucking crows. I'm not kidding. This is within 10 miles of East Palestine.
If you have not evacuated, please leave the area.
Some of that's a little bit disturbing, and I apologize for not giving a viewer discretion warning. Hopefully, all of you are intelligent enough to realize that you should not have children or anybody who's impressionable or easily disturbed watching our streams, because we will give you the real truth and that stuff. We're clearly not seeing a lot of this stuff. Now, I want to point out to everybody that a lot of that footage was just disturbing, but a lot of it was incorrect and inaccurate. So what you saw there was an overhead shot, perhaps from helicopter or drone, of the fire happening, as if the train cars exploded because they tipped over. And that's not what happened.
No.
What happened was the train cars in particular we're referring to, the most toxic ones, were vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride, we'll get into a description of that, but basically it is incredibly toxic. One of the most toxic substances on the planet besides radioactive material. It's very bad stuff. What the intended uses of this particular load were, who knows? But it doesn't really matter. The fact is that it was leached into the groundwater. It was leached into the ground. And the reaction was very much to distance, like literally all of mainstream media, any government, anything, they literally distance themselves completely from it. And so there was a reaction from the train company, which was I can't remember the name of the Norfolk something, I think, train company.
Yep.
And their reaction was burn the chemical off. That's the safest thing, because if it gets into the water, it's going to be really bad. So what they did was they brought in some charges of some kind. I suspect some sort of high incendiary charge, just to start a fire, and blew it up, for lack of a better term, and created, as you just saw there, a mushroom cloud of chemicals. Now, what people don't realize is two things happen. Okay, so number one, they took vinyl chloride, which, from what I understand, any trace amount is not good. Like, any trace amount is deadly. So if there's any amount of it anywhere in the water, in the air, anywhere in the soil, it's not good. It's not a tolerable standard, because it's so deadly. Okay, and so they decided to save the waterways, the soil, and the people around there. They would burn this stuff off. And what they did as a result is do two things. Number one, they created a giant cloud of poison, which was a mix of, from what I understand from burning this, for those of you that don't know, I do have a background in chemistry. So what I understand is that from burning this, phosphine is created, which is a gas that was outlawed. They used to use for gassing trenches in World War II. World War I, etc. That was outlawed because it's a chemical weapon and incredibly bad. The other byproduct is, as far as I know, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as far as I know, the other byproduct is hydrochloric acid. And
one of the reasons. Okay, so what I read was that they used tannerite to create the explosion, and the reason was that they could get it to a high enough temperature that if they heat it to that temperature, then it does not bond. Even in vaporized form, it won't bond with the clouds and then create the hydrochloric acid. That was the purpose of the way that the controlled burn was done. That's what I've read about it. Yeah.
So for those of you at home that don't know, tannerite, and Jay, I don't know if you know this or not, but tannerite is a ballistic explosive. So it's basically a liquid explosive, very stable, as long as it doesn't take a high velocity impact. And when I say high velocity, I mean you can't set it off with a hammer. No. But if you hit it with a bullet at a good enough range so that you're safe, you can set it off. So what they likely did is set a bucket of that or a drum of that somewhere and shoot it from a long range, and that's what caused the explosion. But in doing so, they also literally blew up all these chemicals. And as you saw there, some of the footage was literally a mushroom cloud of chemicals, phosphine, hydrochloric acid, and other chemicals as a byproduct of having burned the thing. And this response was directed and engineered by the train company, not by any government official, not by any expert, but people who had a vested interest in, let's just say, financial stability in the operation of this train company. So what you had as a result is the media, the mainstream media, legacy media rather, distancing themselves from the story completely. Nobody reported on them. No major government official reported on it whatsoever. Like nobody wanted to touch this thing. And I'm gonna roll this next video, Jay. Here's just a shot of the cloud that happened after they blew it up from first person view. Okay, here we go. So, I mean, that's pretty compelling footage of what is very much a toxic cloud of poison over most of the Ohio basin, the Mississippi basin, anything connected to that. And so I'm going to bring this up here in a second, Jay. If you don't mind, just do you want to tell people? So describe to them. I'm going to bring up the map of the river system in a second here. I just got to find it. If you don't mind, just give me a second here. Let's find it.
So, well, I do have one quick addition here before, as we watch this, as we check this out, or having seen that, this is a protocol that mines have. Like my brother, the way that I got into mining is that my brother is a demolitions expert for mining company, and so he got me an in, and I ended up working for a construction company that worked on mines, not for a mining company. But yeah, that is a protocol that they all have in place. They are prepared for an incendiary, what they call what we called it an incendiary. Disaster mitigation, and we almost pulled the pin when I was at Nuna. We almost pulled the pin one time on a project, Giant Mine, which will be in reclamation for another 12 years. It was a horrific economic, environmental disaster in Yellowknife, right outside of Yellowknife, and they were within minutes of triggering an incendiary solution to that problem, and they ended up not having to. They decided not to. But this is the type of thing that all these companies that transport explosives like this will have somebody on staff who's there to push the button when something like that needs to happen. And that's a really harsh and it sounds like a very cold way to say things, but if you want to have plastic, you got to have these chemicals.
It's true. I mean, it's true. We do live in an industrialized society, and we do move and transport a lot of chemicals and a lot of dangerous things, especially through the U.S. A lot of shit gets me. They have a big population, right? They have 10 times the amount of population we do here. So a lot of shit gets moved around here in Canada and there. I suspect when we hear numbers like last year the States had 1,000 train derailments. Here we probably see 10% of that, which would be 100. And I suspect most of them are not very well publicized, just like the States, but that's just the way governments work. I don't think anything we've seen ever in train derailments that I've been looking. So Jay, correct me here if you're a better historian than I am or a better researcher than I am, but I don't think anything we've ever seen has topped this level of disaster with a train derailment. And I think that we are still downplaying the level of disaster that this actually is and the effect that this will actually have. So Jay, I have here, I'm hoping this is going to work. Bear with me. I have here, is that going to work? Hopefully. Wrong one. Here. Should have here.
I lost your audio there for a second, Scott. I got your share screen though. And I heard you say,
Well, it looks like I'm back then.
Okay, good. Yeah, you're here.
All right, so here, folks, is where the disaster took place. This little, right on my pointer here, this little red dot. And Jay, give us here just a rundown of this. This is the Ohio River Basin. This is the pink area, and this is the most largely affected area. But if you look very clearly here, this goes all the way down here, right into the ocean. It goes as far as Arkansas, as far as Missouri, and up to the upper river or upper Mississippi River Basin. Okay. And why I want everybody to pay particular attention to that is, I hope, going to be fairly obvious when you look at the map that I just showed you, or think of the map that I just showed you, and realize that that's right next to Canada. And there's been absolutely no response from Ontario,
our government either,
or from the federal government, or from Environment Canada, or anybody about this. For a country that is apparently pushing the most climate-friendly agenda and the most planet-resurrecting agenda ever, why aren't they all over this? Like, where are they right now? How come Justin Trudeau's not called at what has gone on in the States? And how come he's not stepped up to the podium and said, this goes completely against any form of what we stand for and we believe in? And I'm going to submit that I suspect, at least, it's got to do with exactly this. They're somewhat complicit in the fact that they will cover up anything that happens as long as it, sort of might be detrimental to their narrative or to their story or even to their pocketbooks. We'll also submit that Norfolk something train lines, or whatever it was, train lines, has $39 billion in assets. So there's probably a good, and I suspect a lot of those assets are held by companies that are directly involved with politicians. So I suspect that that's got a great deal to do with why that's not being covered more by the mainstream media, because the left governments right now are pushing a left climate agenda. But if they cover this, and they cover this is happening, this is the major cause of environmental disaster. This is a major environmental disaster. Where's Greta Thunberg? Where's the EPA? The EPA said the water was safe. You want to see how safe the fucking water is in that town? Here, I'll show you. Here, let's take a look here.
They also said Flint, Michigan was safe too. So
They did, yeah, they did. But here's just days after, just a couple of days after this happened. Here's a creek nearby well, not actually even not that nearby, but someplace that they were told the water was safe. So here, let's take a look. Here's in Ohio, more train disaster stuff.
Wow.
Look at all that.
Look at it.
It's all in the bottom of the creek bed. Now look at it. But they burned all the chemicals off of there, right?
That's what I heard, yeah.
Maybe off the top.
Once again, personally, I find that footage a little disturbing. That the people in that town are being told that the water is safe, the ground is safe. And when you see things like
now, imagine if this was a pipeline. Imagine if oil was involved in this. The kind of reaction that would be going on right now, right? If this was an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico, the whole world would know the next morning, and the whole world did know the next morning,
because oil seems to be the only enemy of the left. Well, and the right, obviously, because it's left right here at this point. We're all divisive, but that's not what I'm not promoting that. I'm simply saying, here's the lines that have been drawn. Here's the identities that we've, I guess, apparently, but sort of put on ourselves. So I'm just going to, go with the narrative as it is right now, although I don't fully support it. But either way, I digress. So when you see something like that, when you see a chemical spill like that, you got to wonder, it happens a lot in the States, 1 to 2 a day, which is a lot. And then you got to kind of consider, what's the infrastructure like in the States? It must be pretty horrendous. And I've seen some footage of some pretty horrendous areas of Ohio's train system. So some of this could be, like as we said earlier, we don't want to start creating some sort of narrative or some sort of a story or propagandizing or propagandizing or whatever the fuck the word is, or doing any of these sensationalizing or any of these things for clicks, for views, for attention. So I want to take a lot away from that, but what I want to do is focus right here. Is what we've said is, number one, mainstream media is not covering this at all. Like almost at all. Fox covered it a little bit. I watched the coverage and it was quite shitty. It was more about Tulsi Gabbard or however you say her name. It was more about her than the disaster in Ohio. And it was more about Biden's government response rather than the people that were there and the effect of this and how serious it actually was. So for me, that's all just political nonsense and it's not worth it, not worth our time. But when you see a disaster of this level, you have to understand that, like, when you see, now I want to roll this clip here, when you see this type of thing happen immediately after a disaster of this nature and a reaction by the company that burned off the chemicals to avoid a further loss, they thought they would avoid a bigger lawsuit by burning off the chemical than it would be if they left all the chemicals leach into the groundwater into the water. Or they thought they would mitigate the disaster. Now, this happened just shortly after they had the detonation.
Y'all look at these birds on the collar right, y'all. Look at them. I swear these birds are upside down dead. We in New Carlisle, Indiana right now. Indiana. Wide open, ain't even church. I'm gonna show you. They had already hit the ground. What's going on, world? What is going?
So you can see there, it's quite a serious situation. All kinds of reports of livestock being dead, chickens, people having difficulty breathing, feeling ill, feeling like they've been, sort of exposed heavily to chlorine gas, which is what you're going to get from vinyl chloride because it's a chlorine derivative or a chloramide. So there, this is a serious situation, and again, not being touched by a 10-foot pole with anybody that's got anything to do with the current government's in charge. Now, far be it from me to condemn, any politician that would step up to the plate. And there was a politician actually in Ohio, and I don't have the video. I couldn't get it. I believe he's a senator of Ohio that took a camera crew down to a creek similar to what we just saw, and took a stick and scratched the soil underneath, and you could see the same sort of reaction where you'd see a chemical pooling on the water. So nothing's going to survive there. We've seen all kinds of footage of actual Ohio footage of fish being dead. Thousands, like tens and tens of thousands of fish, livestock, chickens, cattle. And all kinds of birds, as you just saw, they're just dropping dead in parking lots. And birds are usually the first to go in a situation like that because they're up in the air.
Canary in the coal mine.
Yep, and they're all, exactly, and their immune systems are, or rather their circulation systems, everything. Their hearts are beating so much faster than ours that they process everything much faster. They're much more sensitive to toxins and dangerous things in the environment. So when they start to drop out of the sky like that, it's a bad disaster. I don't think we're again stretching the truth when we describe it, or I describe it as a Chernobyl level, and I don't think some of the rhetoric you're seeing online is completely inaccurate, although a lot of it is. Not all of it is, and Chernobyl level doesn't seem too out of reach. Now, for context, and just to make a point here, I want to show another video that has gained a lot of traction and gotten a lot of views on Twitter simply because it's another train derailment that involved chemicals. Now, as Jay said, most trains and train lines carry a bunch of chemicals with them, and 1 to 2 trains derail a day in the States. So please, people,
it's safer than having them in trucks because trains derail a lot less frequently than trucks get into accidents.
Absolutely.
So that's like a way to minimize the risk.
Yeah, for sure. But my point is simply here: don't get lulled into this, following this narrative. All trains are bad, and there's a problem. And I've heard a lot of, and I'm going to show you guys something here.
And it's also not China. It's just a shitty company that fucked up.
Yeah, for sure. So there was another train that derailed just today, I think about 8 hours ago now, in Detroit, Michigan. And I just want to show an overhead shot of this, and it's only going to be about a minute long, although it's a longer clip. I'm just going to leave it play for a minute here. All right, so you guys get the idea. That you can see firefighters and hazmat getting ready to respond to a toxic chemical, and I can't remember the name of the chemical that was spilt in that situation from a train car. So they happen in the States, and so when I hear things and see things online about how this could be a sign of terrorism and that the states could be under attack, I want to caution people. Okay, I'm not saying that that's not the case because I don't have any proof otherwise, but I want to caution people: don't be in a panic. Don't start to react. Don't start to spread that information, because that's some scary stuff. And we don't want a reaction from within the states, because let me tell you, if I was a country that was trying to attack the states, for instance, China, as an example, I might do something like try and destabilize the country, try and make them fight within themselves, and try and make them vilify their government. I might make them vilify left and right, right on left. I might make them pick fights with train companies. I might do things like promote Antifa, which Antifa did happen to share. This is true. An Al Qaeda publication from Saudi Arabia version of Al Qaeda, about how to derail trains. It was an 18-page guide on how to derail trains, and they did publicize that. Now, a lot of people are trying to draw the parallel that because these trains derailed, specifically this one in Ohio, it must be Antifa. Now, I am not an Antifa supporter. As a matter of fact, I do think they're bordering on the level of domestic terrorism. However,
they're Bolsheviks.
exactly. And however, there's been nobody named and no evidence presented thus far as to it actually being any kind of sabotage. Now, I have one last clip I want to show. This might be the tipping point of then, and you probably can't find this anywhere else. So I don't know if we might get a strike for this one, Jay. This was hard to get. But this might be evidence of it being sabotage, but who it was by is the question. And so I want to reiterate that I'm not saying this is Antifa. I'm saying there's no evidence that it was Antifa. However, people that are taking the guide that Antifa quickly deleted from their site, that was published by Al Qaeda, that they quoted on how to derail trains, doesn't mean that they did this. Okay, please. This is not what I'm saying, so please don't come at me. All right, but I want to show this. This might be an indication that it was sabotage. So let's watch this video. We'll be right back. So what you just saw there, so everybody knows, is that when the tracks meet the road, they'll have sections of the track that are shorter, that are pinned with railroad spikes into the ground, into the railroad ties, and it'll slightly change the elevation of the train. So what you've got there is little sections of track that if you go and grind off or loosen the railroad spikes, it's very conceivable that a train could skip that, eventually skip that spike out, and then drag that section of track out, which is what you just saw. That will cause the derailment of a train. Now, unfortunately, that is almost exactly how it's described in the Al Qaeda guide, if you guys read that. And I will not publish that. We will not post that in this or anywhere else, but you can find it if you look it up. And the reason we won't is because I suspect that will get us in very deep trouble. And we're not about that. I don't want to promote this.
Yeah.
Again, please, I'm not suggesting this was done by Antifa. I'm only saying that they posted this guide on their site, and that what was done mirrored exactly like blueprint of how they described to derail a train. So it's weird.
Yeah, and that was Tim Pool covered this for 4 days because he's in West Virginia, which is right there. And the one thing they did say though is that they were in between sidings, so like there wasn't a turn off or a siding anywhere close to where the derailment occurred. So that was like, they were kind of like, their suggestion was that kind of rules that particular type of it. It's not that, I mean, you can, human error derails a lot of trains. I mean, it's not like it's undoable.
Yep.
It's not like it's not something that it's not that it can't be done. But like Scott says, it's like, you don't, you don't make assumptions that'll affect your decision-making process without, factual information. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it's likely. I guess that is the main thing there.
Exactly. That's the lesson here. And like Jay just said, let's just point out that do your research, dive in, and when you can't, I'm hoping you guys are seeing now you can trust us to do it for you accurately. As much as I would like to say that I had definitive proof or I had some kind of evidence that this was an Antifa thing, because I fucking hate them, and I do.
Oh
think
yeah,
they're
I want
terrorists.
them destroyed too. Yeah.
But there's no proof of that, so I won't say that at all.
Yeah, I would rather the guilty party get,
Yeah.
when if that's the
I
train
would-
company, then
exactly. And I also don't want to start a reaction. I don't want to start some sort of branch of Republican Ohio people that are going after Antifa members, and because the last thing we want to promote is more divisiveness, more violence, more reaction, right? The most important thing to remember here, in my opinion, is that there are people that are dramatically and drastically affected. Even the people that took the video in the vehicle where you saw it tip over like that, they've probably just shortened their lifespan by about 50 years. So let that sink in for a minute. Like somebody that was maybe 20 isn't going to live to 70 anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to live to 24 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's some pretty serious stuff. And vinyl chloride is a chemical that was spilled there. You can look that up. I was unable to find the article, but I did read an article in specifically quoting a lawsuit involving vinyl chloride. And in the summary, you can read online. I did read it, and then I couldn't bring it up in time for the stream because I'm drastically underprepared today again, as usual, because that's just me. But basically, in summary, the lawyer said that no amount of vinyl chloride at all is safe. No amount.
Yeah. Zero. Yeah.
So when the EPA is saying it's fine to drink the water and you're going to be fine and go ahead and go about your days, you got to imagine this chemical is burning off in the atmosphere and dropping onto the ground and working its way into the soil. It's also leached a bunch into the soil, which all the groundwater is all connected. It all leached its way into the farm fields. Birds will pick that up, and poop it out. Those that, manage to eat some of it. So it's going to get spread everywhere. And we're already seeing evidence of that from hundreds of miles away, birds dropping dead out of the sky. And when you saw that overhead shot from the plane as they flew by from that explosion, just think that was all up in the, the upper reaches of our cloud, of our generally speaking, of our cruising range for most planes, 45,000 feet. That's going to carry a long way. Who knows if it went even higher? I mean, some might suggest it went straight up to the ozone layer, and in which case it'll get carried around by rains everywhere. So, not trying to cause panic or alarm. This is not one of those things, but I'm simply saying, the lack of reaction from our government, the lack of reaction from environmentalists, the lack of reaction from of a serious and impactful reaction from the EPA and the American government. It should be a warning bell for everybody.
Yeah.
That this is much worse than even I'm suggesting, and that perhaps Chernobyl the radiation couldn't reach quite as far as what this could do through the waterways.
Yeah.
Because they are two different things. And,
yes.
So on that cheery note, we've gone over our hour. Jay, anything else you want to say before we get going? I'm going to leave the floor to you for a second here, because I got to go and get some more tea. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to roll something here, you guys. I just have to get over into there. Sorry, I'm still a little slow on the uptake with this, you guys. It's
The
terrible. I
legacy
know.
media types, you know the ones, they're back to their old tricks this week. Instead of attacking Pierre Poilievre, instead of attacking Poilievre's ideas, because they're unable to, it appears, what they're now doing is noting that there were too many white men at Poilievre's rallies. Yeah, that's it. There's just too many whites at Poilievre's rallies. We know that line of attack worked so well for them when they tried to do that against the Freedom Convoy.
What did it say, sorry? So it says, F your white nationalist agenda.
I am not a white. This is nothing to do about white. This is nothing to do with truckers. This is about freedom for all of Canadians.
Well, once again, just like they did during the Conservative leadership race, they're now going back to this, saying Poilievre is attracting too many white men. Tough to believe that that is where we're at these days, but it looks as though that's all they've.
So that's a standard narrative right there. It's like if there's too many white people gathered together in one place, then they must be the KKK or the Nazi Party or something.
Or they must have white privilege because they're allowed to gather.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we might get, maybe I'm going to touch a little bit on this subject on Sunday because we've again run over our time, I think. But on Sunday, maybe I'm going to touch after I touch on who the segment about our preferred sources of media at this point. Maybe I'm going to touch a little bit on that and about what's going on and what that actually is. Instead of the direct sort of 20-foot view, I want to give maybe a 1,000-foot view of that, because that speaks to something that you may not even realize. But it starts with a capital M and ends in Marxism, just so everybody knows. So, all right, it's been good, kids. It's good to be back. We will be back Sunday. We'll be back Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday from now on. We've had a few things go on in our own lives, and certainly, most importantly for me, got to take care of the woman who loves me the most, Erica. So Tuesday was a no-go for me for a live stream, so you get what you get. If you want to see me survive the next week, then you'll accept what happened on Tuesday as opposed to complaining about me not being live streamed. So thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks again, everybody. We are the Unacceptables. If you're a liberal, I may suggest Made. Yep. All right. We're out. Good night, kids.
Cheers.
It's been fun. Much love. Be good to one another, okay?
Cheers.